when introverts come to you, what are the myths or even the hurdles that need to get factored into the process of how to both remain true to yourself and also be able to be visible?
A lot of times the clients that I work with, they've been told so many times to come out of their shell or to change or to be somebody else that they're not able to actually understand who they are. So that's typically where I start, letting people know that it's not about being someone else. It's about you actually understanding who you are and the strengths you have to offer. I work with quiet leaders, but I don't keep them where they are. The goal is to help them really understand what they have to offer so that they can bring it out in the workplace. It doesn't mean you're changing who you are. It's really leveraging what you have to offer.
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. Here, there's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Lauren Greif has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
There seems to be some confusion. The confusion is that sometimes we feel like, oh my goodness, I've got to be the loudest person in the room in order to make an impact. And we all get confused because that person who is out in front seemingly has a lot of power. And we're here to dispel that myth today. I have one of your favorite LinkedIners, and certainly somebody that I've been following for a long time, who earns every stripe that she has. And her name is Lissa Appiah. And I am so honored to have her here today because she really is the queen of introverts, both personally and in what she shares, both on her YouTube channel and in her content on a very, very regular basis. So Lissa, I want to ask you, let's just kick this off. When did you decide or figure out for yourself that you were a so-called introvert? Like, when did that dawn on you?
That's an amazing question. And firstly, thank you, Lauren, for having me. I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time as well. Love the orange energy that you bring to the platform. As soon as I see that color, I know it's you. So you've done amazing with your branding. When did I know I was an introvert? I would say it was probably when I finished high school. I'm from Canada, so Quebec specifically. There's what we call CEGEP, that is like 2 years, that is between high school and university. And that transition was quite challenging for me. Like, I remember my mom used to work maybe a 5-minute drive from where the college was, let's say a 15-minute walk. So what I would do when I had long breaks, instead of like socializing and interacting with people, I would walk down to my mom's office and sit in her car just to avoid having to talk to people. And it was in those moments, like, pulling out my book to read. It was in those moments that I realized, okay, I don't have my regular group of 2 or 3 people that I've always had in high school. This is a huge transition. But is there actually something wrong with me? Because everybody seems happy about this independence that they've gained. They're now adults, but I am deciding to come to the car and read a book and take a nap instead of enjoying the moment. So that's when I started like learning a bit more about what it means to be an introvert and how I can still thrive in what I'm doing, even though I am an introvert.
So here you are, you're in your kind of early, more formative years. And when did it cross a threshold that you said, okay, like, I am this, and not but, and I also want to take this into a way that I can optimize and maximize it outside of your mom's office or in your car or anything like that, where you can start to engage in other more social and maybe even professional opportunities. What was the moment or the light bulb that said, hold on a second?
Yeah, it took a few years because even through, that time in CEGEP, then university, I was still figuring out who I was, who I wanted to be in the world, but then also getting more self awareness about my personality. Um, there were times I would follow the crowd for the sake of following the crowd and go to parties I didn't want to go to just because you don't want to seem like you're completely different. But I would say it was when I started my professional career that I really realized that, okay, I do need to make an adjustment because I was this person who I did my work well. I liked what I did it well. I was producing results and things were going well in my head because I was doing my job, right? But then I would get comments from people like, oh, you're antisocial, or you're such a loner.
Mm.
And I was like, how did they get this impression of me? Because that's not necessarily who I think I am, but that was the impression I was giving off. So that's in the early days of my career. That's when it became clear to me that I needed to own the narrative of my career. It wasn't just about me doing my work well. I also needed to focus on the way I showed up at work because that also influenced my ability to get more visibility, my ability to actually get noticed at work. And I saw it in meetings sometimes where someone would just say something that wasn't as smart sounding, but they got away with it because they were loud, they're articulate. There's one guy that's coming to my mind as I'm talking about this, but he got like 2 or 3 promotions in a short period of time. But it was mostly just because he was that guy. Like he had the charisma. He was also good looking. So I think that sometimes also helps. Maybe separate topic. But those were the things I was noticing, and that's when I needed to make a change in the way I approach my career.
So I want to backtrack a minute because I know that you're Canadian,
Yes.
but you also are from Ghana.
Yes.
And this background and your upbringing, what kind of influence do our backgrounds have? Because I know that in some cultures it's very unpopular to be that tall poppy, right? To be out there and advocating for ourselves. Many people think it's bragging or it's just
Hmm.
plain old icky and unattractive. So all these things that are being factored in, you don't want to be antisocial, but you also don't want to be like going up against the grain and like, doing things that culturally feel super uncomfortable, even if you're in a different culture. So
Yeah.
how do you assimilate all of this together and do it in a way, because this is really your sweet spot, where you're true to yourself?
Yeah, so yes, I was born in Canada, but my family is Ghanaian. I often say I was raised in a Ghanaian household in Canada because my mom made sure we knew our culture, we knew the language, that, it was ingrained in us. And that meant not necessarily always focusing on yourself. Like what was
Mhm.
important to us when in the way we were brought up is you focus on the collective. And I remember hearing quite a bit of times like it's not about you, it's about you know how you can support others, how you can help others. So this idea of self-promotion and being comfortable with
Oh,
it was not a way in which I was raised. So yes, and I do see that also with a lot of my clients where especially those who are from historically marginalized backgrounds and different cultures than our North American culture. Often that is something that I hear in terms of why, they decide to reach out to me because of that understanding of the cultural difference, but also especially those who are newer sometimes to Canada or the US, the bit of a cultural shock when you open LinkedIn and you're like, wait, like people are just talking about themselves. People are just
Selfie,
promoting
selfie.
themselves without any hesitation, right? And it takes a bit of an adjustment to get used to that, to be in a meeting and share an accomplishment that you had, or to even sometimes little things like addressing a leader by their first name. That's something that
Mm.
can be a shift for someone culturally, but it's those little things that are, culturally accepted behaviors in the workplace that allow you to kind of fit in but also thrive in the workplace. So yes, culture plays a huge role.
What are some of the biggest hurdles that when introverts come to you, what are the myths or even the hurdles that need to get factored into the process of how to both remain true to yourself and also be able to so-called be out there or to be visible or to be a thought leader, because all of those things seem to have some kind of dissonance from each other, right? You want to maintain your truth, and this is really feels like I need to stay quiet, but at the same time I'm not getting the outcomes that I need. So how do you strike those balance, and how do you get over those hurdles?
Yeah, a big thing I often hear people say, and why they get frustrated with the workplace, is that the workplace is built on, I'm sure some of you have read Susan Cain's book Quiet, and she uses the term the extrovert ideal. That's kind of what our workplace is based on, from brainstorming sessions, networking events, even concepts like transformational leadership. It's all around this idea that you have to be outspoken, you have to be the loudest in the room, you have to be that person that's part of sometimes the old boys club to be able to succeed. And so the most important thing that I let people know is that you don't have to be an extrovert to succeed in the workplace. We all have our different personalities, we all have our different strengths, and that's what brings the diversity in the workplace, and that's what brings the success in what we do. And so a lot of times the clients that I work with, they've been told so many times to come out of their shell or to change
Yeah.
or to be somebody else, that they're not able to actually understand who they are. And so that's typically
Mm.
where I start when I'm working with my clients, helping them truly understand who they are, what strengths do they have, and then how can we leverage those strengths in the workplace based on the kind of work that they do. And often what that helps them do is build their confidence, because if you're not confident in yourself, if you're not confident in your own strengths, it's very hard to be confident and to portray that for somebody to recognize it, whether it's in an interview, whether it's while you're negotiating your salary or asking for a promotion. It's very hard for you to convey that message if you aren't sure of who you are as a person. So that's typically where I start, letting people know that it's not about being someone else. It's about you actually understanding who you are and the strengths you have to offer. I was talking to one of my clients recently, and she was like, "Oh, but you said like my whole tagline is staying true to yourself." And so she was like, yeah, so I didn't think you were going to challenge me so much in terms of who I am in the workplace, because you said I have to stay true to myself. And I was like, yes, I work with quiet leaders, but I don't keep them where they are. The goal is to help them really understand what they have to offer so that they can bring it out in the workplace. It doesn't mean you're changing who you are, it's really leveraging what you have to offer. So yeah.
So the first thing you said is tapping into who you are so that you can show up, and that those two things aren't necessarily a trade-off at all, right? You want to
Exactly.
leverage that, right? But I guess the bigger question I do need to go back to is, so why? If quiet leaders are able to have such an impact, why do they need to be non-quiet?
It's a good question, because depending on what workplace you're in, there is often a culture. There is a corporate culture that's kind of how the workplace is. So ultimately, if you're somebody who wants to thrive, you're someone who wants to succeed, there is a game that you sometimes have to play. So it doesn't mean that you need to go to the extreme and again be extroverted or change who you are. No, but it means that how can you really recognize what you have to offer and align it with the needs of your current organization or future organization that you want to work with. And there are countless studies that have demonstrated the importance of being able to build your network and build your visibility in the workplace to ensure career success. Before we started recording, we were talking about the PI formula by Harvey Coleman, and that is one that I have shared in the past. But what that formula is all about is that he says that there's three main components for you to succeed in your career. He says like performance is just the basics. In terms of succeeding, you obviously have to work hard and do your work well. That's expected. From
Can you
there,
remind
he
us what
says,
that percentage is? I
oh,
remember it was
10%.
like
10%
10%, right?
for your career
That's why I'm
success.
asking that.
Yeah,
10%
exactly.
of your success, effectiveness is based on performance. 10%.
Exactly.
Okay, let's hear about the other 90%.
And then he goes into image, which he says is 30%. So that could be, this was written in the 90s. So if we want
Yeah.
to bring it to the terms that we use now, that would be your personal brand. That would be how you present yourself in the workplace on LinkedIn, how you share your thought leadership. That would be 30%. And then he says 60% is actually going towards your exposure. And so exposure is your network and making sure that you're connecting with what the term he uses is the right stakeholders. So what that means is that it's not just about knowing tons of people. It's actually about who knows you and what you have to offer, and how can those people support you when you need the support. How can they advocate on your behalf when you're not in the room? That is the most important component to your career success.
Mm. So I would think that for somebody who is an introvert, those other cheerleaders or, in a nice way, mouthpieces who are advocating for you
Yes.
is a real secret sauce. Can
Yeah,
you
you nailed it.
share?
Yes.
Oh, yay. So help us to understand how somebody who might be introverted can benefit from the force multiplying effect of the network who is going to actually amplify those messages for you. What do we need
Yeah.
to do if we're an introvert in order to set that wheel in motion?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer this question is I'll share my own story, because that's kind of where this all started from. So, as I was saying earlier, once I finally entered the workplace, I was having challenges, even though I was doing my 10% and working very hard. I wasn't getting the same opportunities as others were. And so I really took the time to, in that season, like really understanding myself and what I had to offer. So the strategy that I use specifically is that as an introvert, a lot of introverts have amazing listening skills. And for me, it is a skill that I use and I leverage a lot to be able to succeed in my career. One of the things that I noticed is there was a time, this was maybe 10 years ago, I was on a team and a lot of people were complaining about corporate reporting. And it was something that we had to do on a quarterly basis, a yearly basis. So it was just part of our work. But I noticed a lot of the senior analysts, the managers were complaining about it. At the time, I was a junior analyst and obviously trying to make my way up. So I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to learn everything I need to know about corporate reporting. So what I did is I started to build that expertise in that specific area. For me, I took it like it was my niche. And so that essentially helped me, because when these corporate reporting conversations came up, sometimes nobody knew the answer, but then I had the answer. So I started gradually building my brand around corporate reporting, and people started to identify me and know me as that person. And, sometimes the senior analyst would be like, oh, I don't feel like doing this, Lisa. Can you help with it? Can you go to that meeting? Can you attend this meeting? There's a meeting happening and they want our report for so and so. In one of those meetings that I was able to attend, I met an executive and he noticed me. He noticed what I was sharing. And he was like, hey, we're building a new team. We need people who have your expertise in corporate reporting. It's an opening that's coming up, just putting it out there, apply when it opens up. So I was like, okay. And this was a few weeks later, the opening came, I applied, went through the interview process and everything. I did get the opportunity. And that was one of my first promotions out of 5 that I got in less than 8 years. So that was what kind of unlocked things for me to be like, oh, okay, this is what I can do. I can find a need, or I can find a spot that people aren't necessarily, like, there isn't a lot of competition, and I can start positioning myself there to start to get some visibility without having to force my way through by trying to be the loudest person in the room. I will be the person who has the answers to the questions that they have. So that's one strategy out of many, but it is the strategy I use that helped me progress in my career, going from a junior analyst to leadership within less than 8 years. So, yeah.
So one of the things that I love about this is, yes, it is a great introvert strategy, but all of us can use it.
True.
So turn your ears on and be listening for the opportunities, and clearly don't wait for them, but also you became the go-to. You
Mhm.
became the expert, and we can all do that. So, sometimes it's easy to look at the bright, shiny objects, but also there's a lot of undercover opportunity that you can take advantage of to be able to really make an impact without having to go and chase after it, because
I agree.
clearly there was nobody chasing. You were like, I got this. I'll own this. But that's good too, because the barriers are low and the opportunity is high, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I want to talk about some of the other strategies that I've been noticing that you have done over the years, because I can imagine, as somebody who is a self-described introvert, you also have been very, very strong in selfies, and also in wearing things that are not necessarily shy and demure, right?
Mhm.
And so talk to us about some of the strategies that you use so that you can leverage. You're like, oh no, I'm busted. Leverage your impact without having to go in with a big parade.
This is amazing, Lauren. You have been following me. I'm like, you're speaking my language. Okay, so a strategy that I've used, especially with networking. So, as an introvert, for me, I am very good at sustaining a conversation, but I'm not very good at starting a conversation. And that's typically how a lot of introverts that I work with are. If once the conversation is going, yes, you can ask follow-up questions, you can dig deeper, because we are curious, we want to know more about the person. But that initial, like, how do we start the conversation? Do I have to talk about the weather? I don't want to talk about the weather. Like, that awkwardness is sometimes a challenge. So a strategy that I've used and I've encouraged many of my clients to use is, if you're going to a networking event, wearing bright colors or wearing something that is nice, like dress well. Why this is helpful: typically when people go to networking events, they wear the traditional corporate colors. They'll wear the black, the navy, the gray. That's how we dress corporately typically. So when you come in, and I've had this experience multiple times, and I'm wearing this green dress or like this orange shirt, it does catch people's attention. And then they're like, oh, this is nice. So they'll approach me and they'll say, oh, I love what you're wearing. That's an opening. And that's an opportunity for us to start a conversation. So I can share with them, where I got the dress, or I can share with them why I decided to wear the dress. And, it's just a way to help start conversations. I've seen people online do amazing things. Fellow introverts who sometimes like they'll wear t-shirts with certain wording like come talk to me, or different things to just catch people's attention and just break that, you know it's there's a lot of sameness often when you go to events, especially corporate events. So just by doing something different, it does help you stand out, and it helps you especially with those like that awkwardness that happens with small talk. So it's a strategy that I've used over the years, and it's helped me.
Oh,
It's helped me
yeah.
a lot, and yeah, it works.
It's a great icebreaker. And I also want to say I actually have tried this.
Oh yeah,
I haven't gone all together with like a big bright color, but
yes.
definitely a bright accessory will also work.
I love that. I love that. It's true. It's true. Yeah. Anything that
You know,
stands out, right? And
for
obviously you
sure.
have to be comfortable with it as well, because you have to own it. You have to have that confidence with it. So
Yes,
so
yes. Yes, and talk to us about the selfies because I mean seriously, this is something that I think we all are challenged with, right? It feels icky. It just
yeah.
feels icky. Even the word selfie sounds like it's selfish, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of goes against the whole grain, right? Because even though you're putting yourself out there, you're not doing making it about you. You're just putting a name with a face. But how did you get past that? Because that's for an introvert, that would be like Olympic level.
Yeah, it really, for me, I think it's more of an efficiency thing. So I am someone who I try my like I like to do things in the most efficient way possible. And yes, I do have those lovely pictures that I took at different photo shoots, and they're great, and I do use those as well. But when I really just want to get a post out in 5 minutes, and that's all I have, I'll just pull out the camera and take a picture, and it's done, right? So sometimes that it's just more to serve the purpose. So a big thing when I'm talking about my clients, because I do help them to build their personal brands, and it's also about how much time can you devote to it. I know a lot
Mhm.
of people get excited when they discover LinkedIn, they're building their brands, and maybe the first 2 3 weeks or first month they're posting nonstop. The excitement is there, but what ultimately helps you when you're building your brand is more the consistency. So it's about you actually finding what works for you with the time that you have without necessarily stretching yourself very much. So this picture perfect kind of image never really worked for me because it takes too much time. So what did work is just pulling out my phone and sometimes just taking a picture and adding the message to it. So it was more a question of efficiency and time. And over time, you realize that you're able to build deeper connections with people as well. The post I did was after a run this morning. I did a post about being thankful that there's great weather. It's December in Ottawa and I can go for a run. And, it's a selfie. I look somewhat sweaty in the picture, but it took me less than 2 minutes to write that post. And I've received tons of messages of people who are also runners, or who are telling me like, yeah, the weather's been great. I've been outside also, had the opportunity to run in December, which I don't often do. So that's how you build connections. People see something that's relatable. People see something that is comfortable, that doesn't look all made up, and they typically connect better with that than the picture perfect image.
By the way, your videos rock too. I just want to
Oh,
say that.
thank you.
Like, it's not
I
just the
appreciate
pictures; it's also the videos, and video is here to stay for
it. It is.
2025. I'm just saying, if you're really looking to make an impact, do a video, and don't worry about its polish or perfection. I seriously like the videos where people are just there's skipping a word or, getting off on a tangent for a second or two.
I agree.
Lissa, last words from you for anybody who is wondering just one thing that they can do to take advantage of the 90%, the connection piece, and also the visibility piece that you talked about in the pie. What is one thing that they can do that takes them a little bit out of their comfort zone, but also allows them to be true to themselves?
Yeah, I would say, a big piece of what we've been talking about today is self-awareness. So get
Mm-hmm.
to know yourself and get to know your story. My business is really based on my own story, and really understanding who I was helped me get the success I got in my career, and then being able to start my business now. So really looking back and trying to see what were those trends in your story, what were things that stood out, what are things that you do naturally that you maybe overlook, or you just think, it's just part of who I am, but that another person will see and be completely amazed. Like, I never thought just talking about being an introvert would be something that
Right.
could help so many people. But the response that I get sometimes of people telling me, like, I've never seen a leader who's an introvert who is willing to say they're an introvert. This has
Exactly.
inspired me to be a leader as well. And, those are the kinds of messages I receive that just also motivate me to keep going. But we all have that thing. We all have something about us that can not only help us in achieving our goals, but also bless other people in the process. So when you do take the time to dive deeper into your story, that's when you'll be able to uncover what your thing is. So that's what I would encourage people to do.
So perfect timing, a new start of the year, and a new, really, perspective on how to take advantage of your gifts so that you're not the best kept secret, right? Like, I mean, it's good to be quiet, but it's also good to be able to share your impact to benefit so many other people. And Lissa, you have done that a millionfold. Congratulations on being a LinkedIn top voice.
Thank you.
Congratulations for just being such a giving, amazing, powerful woman on so many levels. And I cannot thank you enough for being here today. And I wish you all good things and more for this year to come. So we're going to sign off now. But before you go,
Sure.
please, if you've liked this podcast, please subscribe. And also, we just love it. We love your reviews. And that's how we keep this thing going, because we're not here like to be, the next big Gary Vee or anything like that, although that wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah.
But that being said, those reviews help us keep our ranking and help keep this podcast going. So please share this and please write a review. That would be so amazing. Thank you. And we will see you next week. Lissa, again, thank you. And for all of you introverts out there who think that it can't be done, go follow Lissa. The link below is in the show notes. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast in a half. Most of all, thank you for you.